Hello and welcome to this Pearson training. This is a BTEC Tech Award training in animal care, and this session is getting started. Ways to teach and assess. I'm Shelley Roberts, and I will be your main trainer for today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these slides. It's a pre-recorded training, so there won't be anybody asking questions or anything like that. If you wish to have their questions answered, I advise that you attend one of our online live events, which you'll be able to find on the Pearson website. I will show you later where you can find these. But for now, I'm just going to go through the slides and give you all the information that will hopefully support you. I will turn off my camera now, though, just so you don't get distracted by looking at me. So as I said, this is a BTEC training for animal care. It's getting started. So we're going to look at the qualification as an overall whole, and then we'll go into a bit more detail on other training. So if you're looking for moderation or external, there'll be a separate training for that. So this is kind of like a little introduction, and then we deep dive later into the other trainings. So this one, we'll be looking at the qualification purpose and structure, the internal and external assessments, the assessment availability and delivery models, grading, additional support that is available, and I will give you a quick tour of the website to show you where you can find all the resources that you need. So let's start by looking at the qualification structure. So on the screen now, we'll give you the breakdown of the three components. So they're called components. If you've done a BTEC before, you might have, called them units or modules, but these ones we call them components. The same kind of idea, but it's just components is what we call them. So we've got three components. Component 1, which is animal handling. Component 2, which is animal housing and accommodation, and component 3, which is animal health and welfare. Now, each component is assessed individually, but 1 and 2 are both internally assessed via Pearson Set Assignments, which we'll briefly cover what they are later. And the third one is the external synoptic exam. Now, it's a synoptic, so it needs to be done at the end. We will look at structures of how you can lay out your course later on. So we're going to start by looking at the internal assessments. The Pearson Set Assignments are basically, as I say, they're set by Pearson. You don't get to you don't have to write the assignments, you don't have to have any internal verification process because they're all set already for you. There's a new one every window, and I'll talk about the windows later. But basically, they've got a vocational scenario broken down into tasks, and they're very much got a good same kind of structure to them, but there'll be elements that will change each time. So it might be the species group that they're looking at, it might be the business that they're looking at, etc. There's different things that will change within it. They will be assessing the skills that they've learned, obviously regarding the content that they've been taught. So they should be taught the whole module before they do their Pearson Set Assignment. And they are internally assessed. So you do mark them, but then they're moderated by Pearson. And you mark them through a marking grid. So it's a set. If you've ever done exam marking, or you've done other qualifications that have marking grids, you'll know what I mean. I will show you in a second what it looks like. A marking grid that has details of what level you do that learner. Now, obviously, this qualification is from a level 1 pass all the way to a level 2 distinction. So the grades they can get vary. So it's all in numbers rather than grades until they work out their overall grade at the end. So it gives them you need to make sure that you've given them an overview, been taught all the content, all the learning outcomes, the overall tasks, and obviously summaries. There's lots of previous assessments that are available online. So I strongly advise that you download them, use them as your teaching resources to kind of get the learners ready for their assessments. They are set timings for this, and I will kind of go through that with you shortly, and certain windows that you have to combine. It's not like previous assignments where you've had internal assessments and you make your own structure. They have to be done at certain periods. The assessments are obviously done in controlled environments. So it's not like an external exam. They don't have to have an invigilator, but they do need to have supervised time. So they're not like assignments where you let them go off and they have however long they all like to spend on it. It's in a controlled environment. Now, there's lots of resources that are available, as I just said, so you can have a look. online, and I'll show you where you can find them. But there is example standardization materials, and this is obviously increasing as more people that sit it, there'll be more available. You've also got the moderation lead moderator reports, which give you a breakdown of how learners did on certain windows and what areas they struggled with, what areas went really well. So you can use that to kind of learn what you need to ensure that you're making your learners ready for. So there's a marking grid. So I'm going to show you the marking grid in a second. It's best fit approach. So it's basically 12 mark grid, and each little grid is 3 marks, and then obviously it opens up overall 12. Make sure that there's consistency, and band marks are not aligned to pass mark distinction, as I said previously. So let me just share my screen with you, and I will show you this one. So I'll just bring this up here a second. So this is, no, that's not what I wanted. Let's try that again. Scroll down till we find it. Here we go. I thought I was ready and I wasn't ready. This is a 12 mark grid for, we're looking at component 1 and handling. Obviously there is another grid for component 2 as well. So you obviously got a grid for each one, and you get a grid for each task as such. But I'm not going to obviously go to it deep depth, because you know, until you've got the assignment, you can't really work it against it. But just to give you an overview, band 1 is obviously 1 to 3. It's limited knowledge. Then you've obviously got 4 to 6, which is adequate, 7 to 9, which is good, and then 10 to 12, which is comprehensive. So that's where I normally start. I'd read the learner's work, kind of work out what kind of level they're doing, and I like to circle this and highlight it and kind of go, right, well, this bit they've done that, this bit they've done that, and work out what the overall they'll be. Because you might find that they're all good on everything, but one little bit was a band 2, but the rest was band 3. Then you'd give them a band 3, and you'd work out that so they wouldn't be then getting a 9. They're more likely to maybe get a 7 or maybe an 8, depending on what you felt was appropriate. So once you've worked out what band they are, you can then go and work out where on that band they fit. That's what the grid looks like. Let me just scroll up to where I was originally. I was a step ahead of myself. So this is kind of like a summary of the table, a bit to the table we looked at on the slides earlier. So you've got component 1, as I said, it's a non-exam internal assessment set by Pearson, but it's 2 hours they get of moderated time, but they get 6 hours, 2 hours monitoring preparation time and 6 hours supervised assessment time. So you get 2 hours beforehand to kind of like research the topic that they're getting. So they'll be given like animals that they need to look into that they're going to talk about handling, for example, and then they will have to go research it, and then in the 6 hours they get their actual assignment. They then complete the work, and they'll be able to bring their notes in. Like I say, we do go into a lot more detail about how this assignment works in the moderation one. So if you want to know more about how these assignments work, definitely come along, or what the pre-recording of that training. There's 2 windows. So you've got the December window that kind of goes through to January, and then that's like when the assessment happens, and then it's obviously moderated afterwards. And then you've got the June one, which again is then moderated, and then obviously they'll get their results. And then exactly the same for component 2. You are likely to do both at the same time, but you might plan your years. But again, like I said before, we will look at models later. So let me just drag this back over here for a second. So we go back to the PowerPoint presentation. So let's have a look at submissions, evidence, and retakes. So like with previous internal assessments, you will have the assignment you're giving to them in obviously set time, and then you will allow the learner to complete their work. There's videos that need to be conducted. Again, we'll go into that more detail in the moderator training, but there's practical elements for both assignments, and they have to be recorded so that you've got evidence for them. So that will be done in that one. So you do all this, and then if the learner obviously achieves, perfect. If the learner doesn't, they do get time to do like a retake as such. This all happens before the moderation process. So you, in that assessment window that you've got, they complete the work, you mark it, opportunity for retakes and opportunity to mark the retakes all has to happen. So you need to make sure you're obviously planning your time well. General feedback will be given to the learners on areas of what they've worked on, like you would with any internal assessment. But they have to be aware that they will be moderated, so this grade is not guaranteed. After the moderation process, obviously marks are then submitted to the moderator. You have to submit all your grades in order, normally from highest to lowest. They will then moderate it. We'll talk about that in a second, a bit more. And then obviously, if needed, learners will then get an opportunity to retake. So that's a totally different assignment they have to like redo. But there is opportunity to do that. So let's look at the moderation in a bit more detail, because I've kind of skimmed past that bit. So you put your marks onto the Excel Online platform of all your learners. Learners will then be randomly selected. They will always select, or they should always select, and if they don't select, you must submit the highest and the lowest grade, and then it'll be a vary in between. Depending on your cohort size, if your cohort's quite small, you might be that you send all your learners. If you're a large cohort, you'll send so many, but I'll show you that in a second. Then your sample will be confirmed, so they'll confirm who they want. You then have to upload that evidence for those learners onto the learner work transfer platform. You'll upload their obviously assignments and their written work, the video evidence to go with it, and your mark. And then it's submitted, your work obviously onto the platform. They are then moderated, and then obviously if everything's happy, their grades are obviously completed. So timeline process in a bit more depth is that the moderator will contact you through your quality nominee or the designated person. So if you're a large college, for example, you will likely be the person who's in charge, the head of the department, etc. Or it might, if you're small, it might be the quality nominee. So they'll contact one of you, and then obviously we'll direct it to whoever's in charge of the qualification. Once they've completed their moderation, they will obviously have an initial moderator feedback report. This is obviously emailed to registered exams officers or quality nominees and notified obviously what the results are. Then they obviously have to do a draft report, which comes obviously later. So this is just kind of like initial, in case there's things that need to be changed, etc., before their final report. So sometimes they might be like, well, actually, we don't agree with this learner's grade. We need to look at that and that kind of stuff. So sometimes that does happen. In rare cases, as in the next one, further samples may be needed. So they might ask to see more. If obviously you sent all of them, they will just work with the ones you've got. But if you have like a larger cohort, they might say, there's a few things that we're concerned about. Can we see, 5 more, 10 more, etc.? And then you'll go from there. And they'll tell you which ones they want to upload. And then this will all be added to their report, the draft report, because at the end, you'll obviously get the feedback from your sample. And they'll give you feedback on the sample as a whole, not on individual work. Once this happens, the final grades are then uploaded to Excel Online, and then obviously they'll be live once they've been confirmed to the learners. So it's the same as like with exam results, they'll be given in like January or August, depending on when the window is. So sample sizes, like I say, we've already kind of talked about the middle box. Your sample size will depend on how big your cohort is. And how do you submit for moderation? You need to obviously upload it onto the platform. You need to make sure you've booked in your learners. That's one thing I didn't say early on, that you need to, when we're looking at models later, you will plan when you're going to do it, and you will submit that your learners are completing these, so they know you need to be moderated. They're not going to know your learners are sitting in assessment if you don't let them know. Now, before we move on to the next section, I did promise that I would show you this information, which is the number of your sample size compared to your cohort. So if your cohort is 1 of 15 learners, you will give all your sample. If you're 16 to 100, you will give 15, 101 to 200 is 20, and 200 plus is 25. Obviously, this is the initial sample. If they need more, they will request it later on. So all of this is about quality assurance. Now, it's to ensure that obviously there's standard across the board, not only just in your centre, but across all centres. So you still need to do standardisation activity, especially if you've got multiple markers, because you need to make sure that you're all on the same page. However, this is to make sure across the whole of the people who are sitting the qualification, there is that quality assurance. It does also mean that you don't have to do internal verification. When you set assignment, you'll obviously set assignments a certain period. You don't need to write assignments. You don't need to have internal work verified by anybody. So if you are a small centre, that's really helpful because sometimes you haven't got that extra person to kind of do the internal verification. So that does help kind of thing. So moderation is replacing a verification. So it is less admin for you. And there's lots of information on the quality assurance. So that's all we're going to talk about for internal assessments today. Like I say, if you do want more information, do attend the moderating and training. It's what it's called, training. So you can have a look at the pre-recorded, or you can also look at live ones where you'll be able to ask questions, etc. with the trainer. Let's move on to external. So there is only one external assessment, that's component 3. It has to be sat at the end of the qualification because it is synoptic, therefore you're taking everything in from all those qualifications and from all the other components, sorry. So you don't want to be sitting there early and then not have all the knowledge that they need. It is a formal exam, so it's done under exam conditions. They're available in January and May. Just say beside the creative ones because art is a little bit different to the size of the project they have to do, but for animal it's always in January and May. It's question mark. It's a bit like a roller coaster kind of layout. So it starts off with like multiple choice, then there's some short answer questions, and then you might get like a 4-mark question, then it might go to like a larger question, then they'll drop that down to a more medium question and then go back up again at the end. So it's a very up-down kind of process. Again, there will be training on just external assessments where we go into a lot more depth and we'll look at some examples, etc., of all those different ones. But the key thing is to obviously make sure they're taught all the spec, make sure you're teaching them exam like strategies of how to like complete exams, looking at times, looking at marks, questions, how long they should spend on everything, all those type of things. It's quite important because it is under exam conditions and it is, you know, a strict time they have to complete it. There's no longer a minimum grade required for this. They can score a U, which we will look at later when we look at overall grades, but that is a possibility. So that's always a less pressure, I suppose. So this is, I like this because this is kind of gives you a flow of the year. So when you're kind of planning your qualifications and you're looking at it thinking, where am I going to do everything? This helps because it kind of gives you the flow. This is every academic year we go through these cycles. Now, when you start a qualification, you're not going to very much likely to put anyone in the first windows because it starts early in September when they're just started. But it's just for your second year, we've got one in there. So we're going to go through it as obviously an academic year rather than what the learners will go through. The first one is in early September. There'll be the release of the Pearson Set Assignments. You get the chance, obviously we have evidence, you'll get the assignment available to you, so you can obviously then know, but you know you have to plan this in advance, so when you're going to do them, to make sure you taught it all. But then you get access to it. It's all on the website. There'll be padlock on it. It will be released to you because you have put your learners in for that assessment. So learners will then, between September and December, do the assignment. So they'll do the assignment, you'll do the videos, you'll mark it. If anyone needs to do resubmissions, there'll be opportunity to do that, and you'll mark the resubmissions. Then December to January is a moderating window. So this is where you have to submit all your evidence like we were going through earlier. So you upload your grades, they select the sample, you then go from there. They have to be submitted by the 15th of December. But obviously, if they're ready, the quicker you upload them, the quicker the process can start. Then January, you've got an external assessment, and all the results for these will be given in March. Then you've got the January window where we basically do exactly the same as what we did in September, but now starting in January. So the Pearson Set Assignments are released. January to April, they will complete their assignments. You will mark resubmissions, marking of the resubmissions. Moderating window is May to June. 15th of May is the deadline. External assessment is in May, and the results for all of these will come in August. So we're just going to have a look at quick delivery model. Now, every centre is totally different, so you will have different ways that you want to do everything, and not every structure is perfect for everybody, but this is just giving you quite a few different ones to kind of think about and consider on what works best for you. And these are ones that are put into practice. So the first one is your standard, I suppose, 2-year model. You will do component 1 from September to December. And in the January window, you will do component 1 Pearson Set Assignment. And then straight after that, you'll start teaching component 2. Then in September of the second year, you'll do the assessment for component 2. Then you'll do teaching straight on to component 3. And then in the May window, you'll do the exam. So it's just basically boom, 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 one after the other. And some people like to have, because component 3 is a synoptic and it linked quite a lot to the other 2 modules, components even, they do like to have it all year round. So you do what I said before with component 1 and 2, but you actually deliver 3 all the way through the first year, second year, and then you bulk it at the end, ready for their exam. So you kind of like helping them join everything together. Some people do like to do 1 and 2 together, mainly to give them opportunity to just concentrate on component 3 at the end. So you do 1 and 2 at the same time, do their their Pearson Set Assignments together in the January window, and then you move on to 3 and you do 3, and then obviously gives them the opportunity to do a reset. So you do their first component 3 exam in the January window, and then in the January window, then you'll do it again in the May. So that's another option to do. It is quite intense to do 2 Pearson Set Assignments at the same time. That's the only thing I would consider when you're doing this model. And if you're lucky enough, you might have 3 years to do the qualification, and therefore you can basically commit a year to each one. So you will start delivering component 1 in September, you'll do the assessment in January, component, and then you'd move on to 2, do 2 all the way to January when you do the second year, where you'll do the Pearson Set Assignment. Then you'll go on and do 3 for the rest of the year, and again, get an opportunity to do the resits. So that's basically just some ideas. Like I say, everyone is different, every centre is different, but hopefully this will help you a little bit. So now we're going to look at grading. As I said before, it's all to do with points normally, and it does get a bit confusing. So we're just going to go through it quickly now. So all learners will have to sit every single assessment. So they have to do all 3 components, and they have to achieve an outcome in all components. So they have to have attempted all of them. So even though I mentioned earlier, there's a U grade in the exam, that doesn't mean they can get a U grade. They can't be, they can't not attempt it. Absent will not count as an outcome. So even if they're absent, they need to then redo it. So that needs to be taken into consideration. No minimum grade outcomes require a grade for the qualification. So what happens is when you're marking it, you give it a raw mark for each component. That will then be converted into what they call USM points, which I'm going to show you from the specification in a second, because I find it's the most easiest way to understand it. And then that is then converted into your grade scale from, like I say, level 1 pass all the way to level 2 distinction. Overall grade, like I say, is on the scale. The final grade is worked out for points, and they can obviously get a level 2 distinction star. I've kind of already mentioned all this, but I'm going to quickly show you the specification, because I find this is the best place to kind of understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so the first 2 boxes, what you look at. So component 1 and component 2, this is what they will get. So they'll get a mark on their assignment. That will then be converted to a grade as such. And then that will be then converted into a UMS point, which stands for, always blanks on me, Uniform Mark Scale. Don't know why, that just doesn't stick in my brain. So yes, they work out the UMS points, and then they are added together to make the overall grade. So let's just kind of give an example. So we've got component 1, they get a 52. Let's say that we gave them a level 2 pass. That's what they achieved. Not that we gave it to them, but you know what I mean. Then we obviously got component 2. That's another grade. Say we gave them level 1 distinction. That one. So we've got the 54 and we've got the 45, and we'll basically add them together. Then they do component 3, and let's say they've just about scraped pass on that one. Let's just do that's 36. So overall, they got 135. So looking at this, they will achieve a level 1 merit because they won't have obviously got to 150, so they're here. So as you can see, I've basically taken the numbers from each one and added them all up, and that will mean that gives them their overall grade. So I hope that makes a bit more sense, because I find that when you're talking about points and it's going from a number to a grade to a then to a number to a grade, and it's very confusing, but this I find is the best, and I just have this always to hand just to look at it so I can go, right, like, where am I at, where is each learner at? And I'm a big fan of a tracker. If you get a tracker for all your learners and you start putting in the numbers for each, their grades, and then converting them to points and stuff like that, so you can see it and you can go, right, well, they've all done component 1 now, this is all the grades they've got, so you can kind of anticipate what grade they will get overall. Okay, so let's talk about what support is available to you. There's loads of different resources online. So you've got teaching guides, you've got sample assessment materials, you've got this specifications. I'm going to show you where to find all this for the Tech Award in a second. But you've also got Exam with the Results Plus and the general resources that are available for Pearson that are available online. So if I grab here, well, we're timed out, but it's okay. I don't think I need to open anything. So if you just type into Google or any other search engine that's available, BTEC Tech Award Animal Care, it will come to this page, and you will then obviously get everything you need. If you do happen to just go to the home page, best thing to do is to go to Qualifications, stay in the box, Tech Award, because we're fabulous, we are first, Animal Care, and then you get to the page that we're at. So that's the quickest way to do it. Once you're here, you can just download the spec from here, course materials, news and training. So let's go to course materials first. On here, you get the specification and the sample assessment material. So some of these are a couple of years old, but they are still good to have a look at. Then you get into this good resources, because you've got the external assessments. So from January, which is when the first one was sat, all the way to June. And in each folder, you get the paper, the mark scheme, and the examiner report. And like I was saying earlier about the moderator report, the exam report is really good because it gives you in-depth information about what went well, what didn't go well, what learners did. At the cohort that's at it as a whole, you don't get individual feedback, but it does give you that kind of knowledge. Because you've got the mark scheme, you can print off the exam paper, give it to your learners to have a go, and all that kind of stuff. They can mark each other's, you can mark them, whatever works best. And then for internal assessments, we've actually got 2 ones. So this one is just kind of like an overall view. So you've got the mark grid, you've got the moderating reports. So again, read all these. As soon as one comes out, read it, note down anything that's important. You've got where you can track your learners. Again, when we talk about moderation, I do show you these, but this is just kind of like when you're tracking your grades and stuff like that. And then you've got the administrative support guide, which is quite useful if you're like course manager in it. Then in the Pearson Set Assignments, this is all the Pearson Set Assignments. So again, from January 23, when the first one, all the way to this one. Now, these ones obviously haven't seen, so they're live. So them ones, let's just go here. You've got component 1 and component 2 available. And then you've got the moderated papers, which is great because it means that you can, if you need to, you've got that kind of thing. So you can read what the papers are. And then even better, in the teacher materials, you've got the sample material. So this is all, every time the Pearson Set assignments happen, the moderators have to work together to do a standardization activity. And that work is then given to the online so that we can have a look at some examples. So they have to have a high grade, a medium grade, and a low grade for each one. And now they're done in zip files. It's great. So you can download it, and in there will be the document that has the learner work in it and talks through the assessments, but also the videos that are linked to it. So you can then see exactly what they're looking at. We've got some older ones, and some of them are just like loose. So you have to kind of find the assignments, which I think further down looks never ending. This is like those assignments, and then you have to find what's linked to it. So that's a bit more harder, but the zip files work perfectly. And these are like, look, all new. So they're a brilliant resource to have. Also in here, you do have curriculum documents, past trainer, but I'll show you where to find that bit. That's quite an old one. And then teacher guides and everything there. So everything's really handy in one place. News normally doesn't have much to say, but sometimes it's in there. Training. This is where you probably may have found the training that you're currently watching. because this is where this will be the 3 recordings. These ones are all currently old. We're just in the moment of obviously doing them, so there will be brand new ones. So if you've watched the Getting Started, which was this one, you can then watch Marking and Moderating, or Preparing for External Assessments. So there will be brand new ones there ready shortly. You can also book on training, live training down here. This one, I'm going to come to that one in a second, but this one is generic. So it's just talking about the Tech Awards as a whole. So if you want to look at like how the moderation process works or external assessments, just as a general, not subject specific, then that's the right place to go. If you want animal stuff, you come here. And in here you have basically little bite-sized videos of stuff that we felt were going to be useful to you to just kind of get an insight. So if you are the head of the course, you might watch the full training, but you might send to all your teaching team who are doing component 2 how to break down component 2, how to break down component 3, how to do the videos properly, what are command verbs for component 3, etc. So it's like little bite-sized videos. We had an issue early on in the qualification about PPE not being correct. So again, we've done a little bite-size on that. And there'll be more coming as we find things that need to be discussed. So always keep an eye out on this one. The only other thing that's quite useful on the website is to go to support, go to teachers, and on here you get, you know, Excel Online results plus Exam Wizard. You've got delivering, working with us, training, you know, all the general stuff is all here. So if you need anything like that, it's a place to go. So that's what we've just done, is kind of gone through that a bit already. So I've talked about where you find these, and I've kind of shown you where you can find all these little elements and stuff in the frequently asked questions, which are in the course material section. So anyway, you find it on demand, as well as the bite-sized videos, the live training, and obviously the course materials. So I hope you found this training useful. Like I say, this is just an introduction. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the qualifications. If you do want some more in-depth on moderating or external assessments, please do go watch those pre-recordings or book yourself onto a live training if you want to have your questions answered from a trainer directly. Thank you very much for joining us.